The Mull of Galloway, Scotland's most southerly point. From here, this guiding light sweeps across the narrow sea between the Rins of Galloway and the eastern coast of Northern Ireland. You can't always make out the farther shore, especially on a misty day like today. But in searching for inspiration for a piece of music that I'm writing about this narrow stretch of water, the one thing that I've learned is, when viewed from over there, Scotland is a constant presence. My travels along both these coasts have helped me understand so much more about the part Scotland has played in Ulster and Ireland's story since days of old. We left Campbelltown and suddenly the mist came down and we could see absolutely nothing. There's some smack off of that.
There isn't harsh.
Even through the headphones. It's a strange thing to be recording, the sound of crabs scuttling in a crate.
Mull of Galloway to Mull of Kintyre, including the Firth of Clyde and North Channel.
In coastal communities in Antrim and Down, and especially amongst those folks who claim kinship with us, the Scots of Ulster, the links are strong. They really matter. Just as this narrow sea that flows between us touches and shapes both coastlines, we've always been a part of one another's stories. This spectacular coastline, its towering cliffs broken by small harbours, is off the beaten track these days. But for centuries, this was Scotland's gateway to Ulster. Travellers on this sea road would have paid close attention to a warning call that was once common here. It's a sound I have in my head to start this music that I'm writing, but I haven't heard it yet. And there's only one place left in all of Scotland where I can, here at the Mull of Galloway Lighthouse.
Phil, what we're going to do is start these K2 Kelvin engines. So what I have to do is top this up with a wee drop of petrol to get us started.
You don't have a wee spot of whiskey to get me started.
Well, it might start on whiskey as well. This is just purely to heat the cylinders up.
Okay. Why am I so nervous?
That's right, we come round here. If you would just press the start button there,
okay.
I'll work the regulator here and we'll get her up and running.
What a thrill I'm being allowed to push the button that will start this engine, which will start a whole chain reaction that will set off the foghorn, the last remaining foghorn on mainland Scotland. And I'm hoping that they can hear us in Port of Ogie. Wish me luck. Am I ready to go?
Go.
Nothing bad will happen, no?
Diesel now.
She's away. Listen to these sounds. There's a wee guy in there like that. Okay. Yeah, baby. The very first device that I ever had that got me into field recording. I set it up in Oman on the balcony of my hotel and recorded the sound of the city. There's a rhythm track if ever I heard one. David up, David up, David up, David up. Oh, I'm very happy. I was hooked ever since, and I've been field recording wildlife, ambience, cities, anything ever since. So I guess this was the start of a whole mess.
There we go. Right. That's that.
And now what happens?
In a minute and a half, the foghorn's going to blow.
let's get out of here. Here it comes. Can you hear the reverb? I'm reliably informed it's 465 hertz, which will be just above middle A on a piano. Are you hearing us, Portavogie? The sea is calm today, but these can be treacherous waters. On a winter's day in 1953, a ferry left Stranraer bound for Larne. 134 souls were lost when the Princess Victoria went down in a dreadful storm. Memorials on both coastlines remember the dead and the lifeboat crews who braved the storm. Communities on both shores were united in grief. Whatever danger the crossing might hold, for the many thousands of Scots who chose migration to Ulster, when needs must, the journey had to be taken. But the movement of folk down the centuries hasn't all been from our side.
In the 17th century, people went to Ireland as a place of refuge, a place to escape famine. But in the 19th century, it was the other way around. And it was a movement of even greater proportions.
Really?
Very large numbers of people came from Ireland to Scotland. Essentially, coal drove all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, coal drove industrialisation. And so there was a lot of digging that out needed to be done. So they needed a lot of workers, and people from Ireland wanted work. My own family were dirt poor in Ulster and came here across the water. And they came all the way over here to New Lanark to take part in the mills and work in that. There are different forms of communities that come to Scotland from Ireland, obviously. You have the Catholic communities who very much kept their own sort of traditions in some ways, own identity. And that's still very much a prevalent thing in Scotland today, or the Presbyterian Protestant community. And they were about a quarter of the people who came from Ireland. And the thing about them was that they fitted in more easily into a Presbyterian country. They could go to the same churches. And so they tended to blend in more and be less obvious over time.
I found that in Ulster, people are very aware and quite proud in a lot of ways of their Scottish connection. Do you think that's reciprocated?
I think people in Northern Ireland in particular feel a strong affinity with their Scottish forebears and past. And I think it's very important to them.
Yeah.
And curiously, we should be very proud of that. But in another way around, I don't think Scots think about their connections to Northern Ireland in quite the same way. Because on the Scottish side of the water, I think that we have changed. We have become more Scottish. We have become less British. And we also have a differing understanding of what Britishness means. It looks different from the Scottish side. I think that's the issue.
You come home from a shoot with stuff that you've recorded, and maybe you strike it lucky and 80% of what you've recorded is useful, or maybe only the 20 is useful, but it makes it a lot of fun. One-bag drum being played by Willie. I'm sure he thought I was a complete nutter. But he was very obliging. And then at some point in the creation of the music, we'll see where we can use these sounds and maybe create new rhythms. And I think what you might have to do is write the music first and then see where the space is to put the sound in. The great thing about making a film like this is the folk you get to spend time and share stories with. A lot of the time, I'm going to meet someone that I've never met before, and from the minute I start the interview, I'm starting to learn stuff. you know a little bit about what they're talking about. You know, the Covenanters, or the huge migration from Ireland over this direction. We always think about us going that way, but it was a common thing. They went both directions. We were never taught anything like this at school. Yet, you know, we could tell you all the wives of Henry VIII, but it kind of doesn't mean anything to us. There was a whole nother life that we knew nothing about. There's just one more person I want to speak with. Poet Steve Dornan, who grew up on the farther shore, but now calls Scotland home.
Ulster and Scotland are intimate strangers, and I very much get that impression with Scotland. There's lots of stuff about Scotland that's familiar, lots of stuff culturally is very familiar, but yet there are those differences as well. I sometimes use the phrase sib and cindered, good old Ulster Scots words, sib being quite closely related, cindered being divided as well, and I think that kind of sums up the relationship, if you like, between Ulster and Scotland and how I found it.
Once you'd moved here, did you find that it's that kind of thing that you don't really know what you have until you don't have it? Did that inspire you to start writing about home?
I think, you know, looking at Burns and looking at those great Scottish writers, the Mackers, all this kind of stuff, it really kind of gave me a sense of reevaluating and also rediscovering all those stories and all those pieces of literature that were traditionally written in Scots from Ulster, but perhaps have been buried or forgotten down the last half a century or so. I had clocked and under shore and glowered into the gloaming, thinking of on ghastly brig, dirling through the water, the air and mysel. A brig to torture Beaufort's dyke. I think it's just an amazing vision that he had, and that idea of the bridge really functions as a symbol, even though it wasn't built. I think that kind of symbolises, if you like, a lot of those connections that are perhaps a bit less tangible, a bit less physical, you know, a bit more cultural and to do with human beings. The on brig atween twa countries is no big yet, a threeveless dwam in the Casey's heed. But damn the fear of overreaching yourself, and the thinking, speaking and screeving of it, it's bigot.
This is another quiet moment. I do quiet moments the best, and I try and get them out of the way and then struggle with the faster pieces later. Basically, it's landscape. And it starts off slow and it gradually develops into almost like a march. And it's a pipe tune because there's pipes in Ulster and pipes in Scotland, very, very big. And there's fiddle going to be in that too, and the fiddle's big in both countries. So I'm just trying to keep a little bit of common ground, the things we have in common. I asked some of the contributors to give me words. They just had to give me one word. And we had things like flow, connection, trepidation, a bridge. Music flows, the water flows. The connection between the Scots and the people in Northern Ireland. There is a musical bridge between us. A lot of the tunes are very common to both countries. Trepidation, it must have been, people must have been pretty anxious at some point, just wondering what was going to happen when they got there and what would they do next. I've never worked like that before, saying, give me words to inspire what I'm writing. And every single one of these words can be used just as a wee reminder as to what I'm trying to aim for. When I write a piece of music here, you know, I live here by myself, and I hear the music in my head by myself, and I imagine all the sounds, but to actually hear it come alive, you know, because you never know. The musicians would get in the room and start playing it, and it would be like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? You know? But it's just such a joy.
Yes, that could be the music for the film.
The band that I picked to play on this, they are such amazing musicians. And they don't just do what they're told, they all have opinions. And they have good opinions, and they're not afraid in any way to say, how would you feel about going this direction? But we can pick and choose the things that work the best.
That'll do.
During the process, I had gone out in a boat with a bunch of oarsmen, and I'm sitting in the back with some microphones trying to record the sound of the oars, you know, in the rowlocks. And they decided to go extra fast at one point, and the water all came over where I was sitting, and I got drenched. But I got some lovely sounds. I was sitting in the house here with everybody, and this sound of the oars and the rowlocks just suggested a rhythm. A few rowlocks. I started to play a melody, and suddenly it appeared out of nowhere. And it was written in the length of time it took to play it. You should be picking here. Thankfully, one of the other band members had stuck their telephone out and recorded what I had done, because I would have forgotten it, no question, by the end of it. So just for a trial this time round, gentle start with you, just something softly lyrical, and then you guys and me start to creep in towards the second A and lift it. We ended up with this lovely little theme. You know, I'm working. This cat, you couldn't touch it 5 months ago. It was a stray, but now it's become friendly. I'll have to teach it filming etiquette. Anyway, you could easily try to tell a story and like follow a timeline with the music, but you know, I'm a live performer normally, and I like to think of it as a performance. So I want to incorporate the influences from the historical aspects that I've learned. And it's not about the story of the historical things, it's about the feelings that I got from it. So it's kind of about the drama or the sadness or the excitement. I've watched passion grow in Scotland over the years as we became more and more comfortable in our own skin. And it took a long time for people to realise that we are a solid, cultural, creative nation with a strong history, a strong past and a strong future. And the same with the Ulster Scots that I encountered. Very proud of their connection with Scotland. Very proud of their life in Ireland.
Let's try that.
If you get a chance, Steph, can you mute both Sally's channels, please? Okay, let's all play from after the break. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I could be annoying for an orchestrator. I give them the tunes and the harmonies, and then they create something beautiful out of it. Yes, that does help a bit. And then while we're playing it, I go, oh, this would sound nice. Towards the end, there's a thing that goes da, 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 da. And it's kind of what we're talking about with the journey backwards and forwards across the narrow sea. It's the ultimate combination of two cultures, and it's shaped and formed into something new that doesn't sound out of place or doesn't feel out of place. That's not the guitar.
That's the wrong flipping instrument.
The guitar is much bigger than that.
There, it's there, look.
Where?
Yeah.
Oh, there's the guitar. I got all confused. I thought that was a ukulele. We'll keep going, and then we'll have a wee break for lunch, and then we'll bash on till the end of today. And there's no turning back because filming is tomorrow. You could record the wind in Kintyre and you could record the wind in Portavogie. It could be the same wind, but it'll sound completely different. Wind has no sound until it comes into contact with something. And that's exciting, just to see exactly what you get. If you spend the time to listen, it's a fascinating world to get involved in, just listening. There's a big difference between listening and hearing. We all hear stuff every day. It's not very often we spend time actually listening. We imagined if we did the filming in the summer, you'd be able to be in Scotland and look over and see Ireland and vice versa. But we didn't, because heat creates things that create fog. And we would turn up to do things and we could see nothing. We were all set up with our cameras looking dead fancy. Everybody looking, what are they filming? Fog. Every day. You want to tell a story. You don't want to go fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow. You want the music to move through from A to B. So there's kind of little tender moments, but there's some very sad things as well. My dear friend John Ashton Thomas, who originally was working with me as an orchestrator on this project, and he was a big influence on my writing. And very sadly, he passed away. The last thing he and I wrote together was about the sea. He had a big love of the sea. After a year of thinking, talking and listening, of travelling back and forth across this narrow sea, I've realised that there has always been a bridge across it. And the music and the folklore, lots of the traditions, lots of the beliefs. And I would like to think that perhaps some of this music that I've written has become kind of part of that story, and it may be shared in the repertoire of people on both sides. It's there for the taking.